I should have known something was wrong when Lisa started calling me her roommate at parties. Not her husband, not even her boyfriend, which would have been a step down, but at least acknowledged we shared bodily fluids on occasion. No, I was her roommate, like some college kid splitting rent on a studio apartment. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Tonight was April's birthday party, and Lisa had outdone herself in the art of making me invisible. I stood in the corner of April's ridiculously expensive downtown loft, nursing a beer that had gone warm 20 minutes ago, watching my wife of 3 years flirt with every man in the room like she was auditioning for a reality dating show. David, right? Some guy in a polo shirt extended his hand. I'm Brad. Lisa's mentioned you're her roommate? I shook his hand, noting how he emphasized the word like it was code for something else. That's right, just the roommate. Brad grinned, clearly thinking he was in on some joke. Cool. So you guys just split bills and stuff? Before I could answer, Lisa's laugh cut through the music. She was standing near the kitchen island, surrounded by 3 guys I didn't recognize, touching one of them on the arm while she told some story that apparently required a lot of animated gesturing. The guy, tall, expensive haircut, the kind of watch that costs more than my car, was eating it up. Lisa's always been popular, Brad said, following my gaze. April says she's basically single these days. My grip tightened on the beer bottle. Is that what April says? Yeah, man. I mean, no offense, but living with someone isn't the same as being with them, you know? I turned to look at Brad, really look at him. He had that smug expression people get when they think they know something you don't. The kind of look that makes you want to explain exactly how wrong they are, preferably with your fists. Instead, I smiled. You're absolutely right. The party swirled around us, Lisa's friends, people I'd known for years, all treating me like furniture, functional but forgettable. I watched Zoe, Lisa's college roommate, whisper something to April while glancing in my direction. They both giggled. I made my way to the bathroom, needing a moment away from the performance. The hallway was quieter, lined with black and white photos of April's various vacations. Bali, Paris, somewhere with a lot of mountains. All the places she'd been since her divorce settlement came through. When I came out, Lisa's cousin Jared was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with a drink in his hand. Jared had always been a piece of work, the kind of guy who peaked in high school and never quite figured out why the world didn't revolve around him anymore. Hey, David. He clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to spill some of his drink. How's married life treating you? Can't complain, I said, trying to step around him, but Jared wasn't done. He never was. You know, I gotta say, I admire your arrangement with Lisa. Very modern. Our arrangement? Yeah, the whole roommate thing. Friends with benefits, right? He winked like we were sharing a secret. Smart way to keep things casual. No pressure, no expectations. I stared at him. What exactly did Lisa tell you about our marriage, Jared? Marriage? He laughed, loud enough that a couple people in the living room turned to look. Dude, she told everyone you guys are just roommates. Said she's basically single but with someone to split the rent. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd suspected, of course. The way she'd been acting lately, the late nights, the phone calls she'd take in the other room. But hearing it confirmed, knowing she'd been telling people we were just roommates. Oh shit, Jared said, his grin faltering as he read my expression. You didn't know she was saying that? I looked past him into the living room, where Lisa was still holding court with her admirers. She caught my eye for a split second and waved, a casual little finger wiggle like you'd give to an acquaintance. No, I said quietly. I didn't know. Jared shifted uncomfortably. Look, man, maybe I misunderstood. What exactly did she say? He glanced around, suddenly realizing he might have stepped in something bigger than he'd intended. Just that you guys were more like friends living together. That she wasn't really tied down or anything. I nodded slowly, processing this information. 3 years of marriage, and I was a roommate. A convenient way to split the bills while she shopped for my replacement. Thanks for letting me know, I said. David, I'm sure she didn't mean... But I was already walking away, back into the living room where my wife was explaining to her audience why she was basically single. I caught the tail end of her story as I approached. So liberating, you know? Like, I have all the benefits of living with someone but none of the drama. It's perfect. The tall guy with the expensive watch nodded thoughtfully. That's really mature of you both. A lot of people can't handle that kind of arrangement. Well, Lisa said, flipping her hair in a way I'd once found charming, some of us are just more evolved than others. April noticed me first. Oh, David, we were just talking about your living situation. It sounds so... practical. Lisa turned, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance that I'd interrupted her performance. It works for us, I said evenly. See? Lisa beamed at her audience. David gets it. We're like the perfect roommates. No jealousy, no possessiveness, just two adults sharing space. The guy with the watch, Nathan, someone had called him, extended his hand to me. I'm Nathan Grant. Lisa's told me so much about your arrangement. Very progressive. I shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the confident smile. All good things, I hope. Oh, absolutely. She says you're like the ideal roommate. Clean, quiet, pays your bills on time. He chuckled. If I wasn't so committed to living alone, I'd be jealous. The thing about roommates, I said, still shaking his hand, is that they can move out any time. Nathan's smile faltered slightly, but Lisa just laughed. David's so funny. Where would you go? You love our apartment. Our apartment, I repeated. Right. The conversation continued around me, but I'd stopped listening. I looked at Lisa, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. When had she become this person? When had I become so invisible that she could erase our marriage in casual conversation? I set my beer down on April's glass coffee table and pulled out my keys. You leaving already? Lisa asked, not really looking at me. The party's just getting started. Yeah, I said, I'm going home. Okay, I'll catch a ride with April later. Sure thing, roommate. I walked out of that party and into the cool night air, my mind already working through the logistics of what came next. Lisa wanted a roommate arrangement? Fine, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail about roommates. Sometimes they move out. The apartment felt different when I walked in alone. Bigger, somehow, like Lisa's absence had created space I hadn't noticed was missing. I stood in our living room, my living room, I corrected myself, and tried to remember the last time I'd been here by myself for more than an hour. It had been months. I walked through each room slowly, taking inventory. The bedroom with its king-size bed and Lisa's collection of throw pillows that served no purpose, except to be removed every night and replaced every morning. The bathroom with 2 sinks, though Lisa's side had gradually expanded to claim 3/4 of the counter space. The kitchen where we used to cook together, back when we were actually together. In the study that had become Lisa's personal space, I found the lease agreement in the filing cabinet. We'd signed it together 18 months ago, both our names on the dotted line, both of us responsible for the monthly rent. I read through the terms carefully, something I should have done more thoroughly the first time. There it was, buried in Section 12, lease transfer provisions. With 30 days' notice and payment of a transfer fee, one party could remove themselves from the lease, leaving the other solely responsible. I pulled out my laptop and started typing. The letter was simple and businesslike. I was removing myself from the lease effective immediately, transferring full responsibility to Lisa Marie Henderson. I'd already paid my portion of next month's rent and utilities, as required by the lease terms. The transfer fee would be paid by cashier's check, enclosed. It took me 3 hours to pack everything that was actually mine. Funny how little space your life takes up when you really think about it. Most of the furniture was Lisa's or things we'd bought together that she'd picked out. The books were mine, along with my clothes, my computer, and a handful of personal items that had somehow survived 3 years of gradual territorial loss. I'd already found a furnished studio apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was available immediately and required only first month's rent and a security deposit. I'd paid both online while Lisa was telling strangers about our arrangement. The hardest part was the photos. 3 years of pictures documenting a relationship that had apparently ended without me realizing it. Lisa at my company Christmas party, arm around my waist, smiling like she meant it. Our wedding day, small ceremony, just family and close friends. The honeymoon in Cabo, both of us sunburned and happy. I left them all on the dresser in the bedroom. By 4 a.m, my car was loaded, and the apartment looked like I'd never lived there. I walked through one more time, checking for anything I'd missed. In the kitchen, I found the coffee mug Lisa had given me for my birthday 2 years ago. "World's best roommate," it said in cheerful blue letters. I'd thought it was a joke at the time. I left the mug on the counter next to the lease transfer papers and my apartment key. On top of the papers, I placed a yellow sticky note with 5 words. "Roommates don't stay forever. David." The new apartment was everything my old life wasn't. Small, simple, mine. I unpacked my books first, arranging them on the single bookshelf that came with the place. Then my clothes, which fit easily in the compact closet. My computer went on the small desk by the window, which had a decent view of the street below. By sunrise, I was settled in my new life. I turned off my phone and slept for 6 hours. When I woke up, I had 17 missed calls and 34 text messages, all from Lisa. I read through them in chronological order, watching her emotional state deteriorate in real time. 1:47 p.m. "Where are you? Came home and all your stuff is gone." 1:52 p.m. "David, this isn't funny. Call me." 2:15 p.m. "Found your note. What the hell does that mean?" 2:18 p.m. "Are you seriously doing this right now, over a stupid party?" 2:45 p.m. "I called the landlord. He says you transferred the lease to me, the whole lease. Do you know how much that costs?" 3:20 p.m. "David, I'm serious. Call me back. We need to talk about this." 3:22 p.m. "This is so immature." 4:10 p.m. "Where are you staying? With your brother? I called him and he won't tell me anything." 4:11 p.m. "Your brother is an asshole, just like you." 4:45 p.m. "Look, maybe I said some things at the party. People were drinking. You know how it gets." 5:30 p.m. "I didn't mean anything by the roommate thing. It was just easier to explain." 5:35 p.m. "Explain what? That we're married? Yeah, that's really complicated." 6:15 p.m. "Fine, don't answer. But you can't just disappear. We have things to work out." 6:20 p.m. "Like the lease, and the credit cards, and the car insurance." 6:22 p.m. "Oh shit, the credit cards." That last message had been sent 20 minutes ago. I could almost see the moment she'd realized the full scope of her new independence. All our joint accounts, the ones where I was the primary holder and she was an authorized user. The car insurance policy in my name. The cell phone plan. All the practical things that come with being married instead of being roommates. I made myself a cup of coffee and started making phone calls. First, the credit card companies. I removed Lisa as an authorized user on all 3 accounts, effective immediately. The customer service representatives were polite and efficient. "Yes, sir, we can do that right away." "Yes, sir, she'll need to apply for her own cards if she wants credit." "No, sir, she won't be able to use the existing cards after today." Next, the car insurance. Lisa's car was financed in her name, but she was on my policy as a secondary driver. I removed her from my policy and suggested she shop for her own coverage. The agent mentioned that her rates might be higher as a single policyholder, but that wasn't really my problem anymore. The cell phone plan took longer. We'd been on a family plan for 2 years, and Lisa's phone was due for an upgrade next month. I switched my number to an individual plan and had Lisa's line disconnected. She could keep the phone, but she'd need her own service. By the time I finished, Lisa had sent 6 more increasingly frantic messages. The last one just said, "David, please." I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The neighborhood around my new apartment was different from the trendy area Lisa and I had lived in. More working class, fewer boutique coffee shops and yoga studios. There was a diner on the corner that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s, and a dive bar called Murphy's that advertised cold beer and hot food in neon letters. I liked it already. When I got back to the apartment, someone was knocking on my door. For a moment, I thought Lisa had somehow tracked me down, but the voice was male. "David? You in there? It's Tom." My brother. I opened the door to find him holding a 6-pack of beer and wearing the expression he got when he was trying not to say, "I told you so." "Heard you might need these," he said, holding up the beer. "How did you find me?" "You used me as a reference for the apartment. Landlord called to verify." He pushed past me into the small living space. "Nice place. Very minimalist. It's temporary." "Uh-huh." Tom set the beer on the kitchen counter and opened 2 bottles. "Lisa called me about 6 times today. She's pretty upset." "I imagine she is. She says you disappeared without warning, just packed up and left." I took the beer he offered and leaned against the counter. "She wanted a roommate arrangement. I gave her one." Tom nodded slowly. He'd never liked Lisa much, though he'd been polite enough at family gatherings. "What's the plan now?" "I don't know yet. Figure out what comes next, I guess. You could come stay with me and Karen for a while. We've got the spare room." I appreciated the offer, but I needed space to think. "Thanks, but I'm good here." We drank our beer in comfortable silence for a while. Tom had always been good at knowing when not to push. Finally, he set down his empty bottle and looked at me seriously. "You know she's going to try to fix this, right? Lisa doesn't like losing control." "There's nothing to fix. She made it pretty clear what she thinks our relationship is." "And what do you think it is?" I considered the question. 3 years of marriage, and I honestly wasn't sure anymore. "I think it's over." Tom nodded. "Good. She never deserved you anyway." After he left, I sat in my new apartment and tried to imagine what Lisa was doing. Probably calling everyone she knew, trying to get someone to talk sense into me. Maybe crying, though Lisa wasn't much of a crier. More likely she was angry, pacing around the apartment that was now entirely her responsibility, making lists of all the ways this was my fault. My phone buzzed with another message. This time it wasn't from Lisa. "Hey David, this is April. Lisa asked me to reach out. She's really sorry about last night. Maybe you guys could talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Then I blocked April's number. If Lisa wanted to talk, she knew where to find me. But I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Roommates, after all, don't owe each other explanations when they decide to move out. The calls started the next morning. Not from Lisa. She'd apparently gotten the message that I wasn't answering, but from everyone else in our social circle. It was fascinating to watch how quickly news traveled through Lisa's network of friends. First was Zoe, Lisa's college roommate and self-appointed relationship counselor. "David, what the hell is going on? Lisa is beside herself." I was sitting in the diner on the corner, working my way through what the menu optimistically called a hearty breakfast. The coffee was strong, and the eggs were exactly as advertised, over easy, which was more than I could say for my marriage. "Is she?" I asked, cutting into my toast. "She says you just disappeared. That's not like you." "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." There was a pause. Zoe wasn't used to me pushing back. In the old dynamic, I was the reasonable one, the one who kept the peace, the one who apologized first. "Look, I don't know what happened at the party, but Lisa feels terrible about it. Does she? Or does she feel terrible about the lease being in her name now? Another pause. The lease? Yeah, the lease. And the credit cards. And the insurance. All the boring roommate stuff. David, you're being ridiculous. So she called you her roommate at a party. People say things when they're drinking. I set down my fork and really listened to what she was saying. Zoe, how long has she been telling people we're just roommates? What do you mean? I mean, was last night the first time you heard her describe our marriage that way? The silence stretched long enough that I had my answer. It's not what you think, she said finally. What do I think? She's been feeling trapped lately. The marriage thing is hard for her. The marriage thing. You know what I mean. The expectations. The pressure to be a certain way. She loves you, David, but she needs space to be herself. I laughed, surprising myself. Space to be herself. Right. And what exactly does that look like, Zoe? I think you should ask her that. I think I already have my answer. I hung up and went back to my breakfast. The eggs were getting cold, but they still tasted better than 3 years of swallowing my pride. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Nathan Grant. We met at April's party. Could we talk? I stared at the message, trying to figure out how Lisa's new friend had gotten my number. Then I remembered. We'd connected on LinkedIn the night of the party, back when I was still playing the role of the understanding roommate. I typed back, "What about?" His response came quickly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about my relationship with Lisa. I'd like to clear the air." Interesting. The guy was worried enough to reach out directly. That told me everything I needed to know about what kind of misunderstanding we were dealing with. "No misunderstanding," I replied. "She's single, remember? Do whatever you want." I blocked his number, too. Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. April, trying to play mediator. Jared, calling to apologize for stirring up trouble. Even Lisa's mother, who had never liked me but was apparently concerned about her daughter's financial situation. "David, dear, I know you're upset, but Lisa can't afford that apartment on her own." "Then she should find a roommate," I said. "I hear she's good at that." The only call I took seriously was from my boss, checking to make sure I was okay. "You seemed a little distracted yesterday," Mike said. "Everything all right at home?" I was in my new apartment, setting up a proper workspace at the kitchen table. The studio was small, but it had good light and reliable internet. I could work from here as easily as I could from the office. Actually, there is no home anymore. Lisa and I are getting divorced. "Shit, David, I'm sorry. You need some time off?" "No, I'm good. Work keeps me focused." "Well, if you change your mind, just let me know. And if you need a lawyer recommendation..." "Thanks, Mike. I'll keep that in mind." After I hung up, I sat staring at my laptop screen, thinking about lawyers and divorce proceedings and all the legal machinery that would be required to officially end what Lisa had already ended in practice. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, our old apartment. "David, please don't hang up." Lisa's voice was different, smaller somehow, less confident. "What do you want, Lisa?" "I want to talk, face to face. Can you come over?" "To your apartment?" "No. It's our apartment." "Not according to the lease." I heard her take a shaky breath. "David, I know I screwed up. The things I said at the party. I was drinking and I was showing off and I said stupid things. But that doesn't mean I want to end our marriage." "What do you want, Lisa?" "I want my husband back." The words hung between us. 3 days ago, they might have meant something. 3 days ago, I might have been willing to pretend that a drunken slip at a party was just that, a slip. But 3 days of phone calls from friends who'd known about her roommate story for months had clarified things considerably. "Which husband is that? The one you've been telling people doesn't exist?" "I never said that." You said we weren't married. You said you were single. You said I was just someone to split the rent with. I was trying to sound independent. Independent from what? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. From being David's wife. There it was. The truth, finally. Well, I said. Now you are. David, wait. But I'd already hung up. That evening, I walked to Murphy's, the dive bar I'd noticed on my first day in the neighborhood. It was exactly what it looked like from the outside. Dim lighting, worn wooden bar, the kind of place where people came to drink beer and mind their own business. I ordered a beer and sat at the end of the bar, content to be anonymous. The bartender was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the kind of face that had seen everything twice. You're new, she said, setting down my beer. Just moved to the neighborhood. Running from something or toward something? I considered the question. Both, I think. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Those are the best moves. I'm Carol. David. Well, David, welcome to Murphy's. We don't have much, but what we have is honest. I drank my beer and listened to the conversations around me. Normal people talking about normal problems, work, family, the weather. No one was discussing their arrangement with their spouse or explaining why they needed space to be themselves. It felt like coming up for air after being underwater for months. When I got back to my apartment, there was an envelope that had been slipped under my door. My name was written on it in Lisa's handwriting. Inside was a check for half of next month's rent and a note. David, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I've been selfish and thoughtless, and I've taken you for granted. I don't want to be divorced. I want to be married to you. Can we please try to work this out? I love you. Lisa. I looked at the check. It was drawn on an account I didn't recognize. She must have opened her own checking account since I'd removed her from our joint accounts. I tore up the check and threw it away. The note I kept. Not because I was sentimental, but because it was evidence of something I was beginning to understand. Lisa wasn't sorry she'd hurt me. She was sorry she was facing the consequences of hurting me. There was a difference, and it mattered. I should have known Lisa wouldn't give up easily. She'd never been the type to accept defeat, especially when defeat came with a rent payment she couldn't afford and credit card applications that kept getting denied. The ambush came on Thursday morning. I was leaving my apartment building, heading to the office for a meeting I couldn't take remotely, when I found her waiting by my car. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed. She was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days ago, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. I tried to get around her, but she stepped in front of me, blocking my path to the driver's door. David, please, 5 minutes. You had 3 years. You don't get 5 more minutes. I know you're hurt. I'm not hurt, Lisa. I'm done. But she wasn't listening. She never had been, really. I talked to a counselor, Dr. Martinez, the one April recommended. She says what happened is completely fixable. Couples go through rough patches all the time. I stared at her. A rough patch? You told everyone you know that we're not married. I explained that to Dr. Martinez. She says it's a common defense mechanism when people feel overwhelmed by commitment. Defense mechanism. Yes. I was protecting myself from the pressure of being seen as half of a couple. I needed to maintain my individual identity. The words sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing them. Probably she had. Lisa had always been good at finding expert opinions that supported whatever she wanted to do. And now? Now I realize I was wrong. I want to be half of a couple. I want to be your wife. I looked at her standing there in her wrinkled clothes, pleading with me to come back to a marriage she'd already ended, and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Lisa, do you know why I left? Because of what I said at the party. No, I left because of what you said to Nathan Grant. Her face went pale. What? Nathan Grant, tall guy, expensive watch, the one you were flirting with all night. He texted me after I left. David, I never. He wanted to clear the air about his relationship with you. Apparently, he was under the impression that you were available. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in our conversation, she had nothing to say. How long, Lisa? How long what? How long have you been seeing him? I'm not seeing him. But you want to be. She looked away. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You want to sleep with Nathan Grant, but you also want me to pay half the rent. You want to be single, but you want to be married. You want everything, and you don't want to choose. That's not fair, I laughed, surprising both of us. Fair? You introduced me to the man you're cheating with and called me your roommate in the same conversation. But I'm being unfair? I'm not cheating. What would you call it? She was crying now, tears streaming down her face in a way that would have broken my heart a week ago. Now it just looked like another performance. I call it being confused. I call it making mistakes. I call it being human. I call it being single, I said. Which is what you wanted, right? I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I watched her pull out her phone, probably calling one of her friends to complain about how unreasonable I was being. The meeting at the office was routine, quarterly budget review, nothing that required much creativity. But it felt good to sit in a conference room and discuss normal problems with normal solutions. Revenue projections and marketing strategies were so much simpler than marriage counselors and defense mechanisms. Afterward, Mike pulled me aside. You doing okay? You seem different. Different how? More focused, less, distracted. I thought about that. Yeah, I think I am more focused. Good. Listen, I've been thinking about that promotion we discussed last month. The regional manager position. You interested in throwing your hat in the ring? Regional manager would mean more money, more responsibility, and probably some travel. A month ago, I would have talked it over with Lisa first, tried to figure out how it would affect our life together. Now I just said, yes. Great. I'll set up a meeting with corporate next week. I was walking back to my desk when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered it anyway. David, this is Carol from Murphy's. You left your credit card here last night. I had stopped by the bar after work the previous evening, just for one beer and some conversation with people who didn't know my history. I must have forgotten to close out my tab. Thanks, Carol. I'll swing by tonight to pick it up. No problem. Listen, there was a woman here earlier asking about you. Blonde, pretty, seemed upset. Lisa, of course. What did she want? To know if you were a regular, if you came in with other women, if you seemed like the type to have affairs. Carol paused. I told her I don't discuss my customers' business. I appreciate that. She didn't take it well. Started crying, said her husband was having a midlife crisis and she needed to understand what was happening to him. What did you tell her? I told her that in my experience, men don't have midlife crises. They just get tired of pretending to be happy when they're not. That evening I walked to Murphy's to retrieve my credit card. The bar was busier than it had been the night before. After-work crowd, people decompressing from their day with beer and conversation. Carol was behind the bar, mixing drinks with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing it for decades. She saw me come in and nodded toward the end of the bar where I'd been sitting. Your usual spot's open. I sat down, and she placed my credit card in front of me along with a beer I hadn't ordered. On the house, she said. Consider it a consultation fee. Consultation fee? Your wife spent 2 hours here this afternoon, trying to get me to psychoanalyze you. Figured I earned a tip. I took a sip of the beer. What did she want to know? Everything. Your drinking habits, your mood, whether you seemed depressed or angry, whether you talked about her. Carol wiped down the bar in front of me. She's convinced you're going through some kind of breakdown. What do you think? I think you're going through some kind of breakthrough. A man at the other end of the bar called for another round, and Carol moved away to serve him. I sat there thinking about the difference between a breakdown and a breakthrough, and why Lisa couldn't tell them apart. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Nathan Grant. I think we should meet." This time, I didn't block the number. Instead, I typed back, "Murphy's Bar, 412 Oak Street. 1 hour." If Nathan Grant wanted to meet, I was curious to hear what he had to say. And if Lisa had sent him to plead her case, well, that would tell me something too. He showed up exactly an hour later, looking around the bar like he'd never been in a place that didn't require a reservation. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he stood out among Murphy's regular clientele like a peacock in a chicken coop. I waved him over to where I was sitting. He approached cautiously, like he wasn't sure what to expect. "David? That's me. Buy you a drink?" He looked at the beer selection with barely concealed dismay. "I'll have a scotch. Top shelf." Carol poured him something that was probably the most expensive thing in the bar, which still wasn't saying much. Nathan took a sip and tried not to wince. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," he said. "What did you want to talk about?" "Lisa." "What about her?" He took another sip of scotch, gathering his courage. "I want you to know that nothing happened between us." "Define nothing." "We didn't sleep together." "But you wanted to." He nodded reluctantly. "Yes." "And she wanted to." Another nod. "But you didn't, because she was married." "That's right." I studied his face, trying to read him. He seemed sincere but nervous, like a man who was telling the truth but not the whole truth. "What aren't you telling me, Nathan?" He finished his scotch in one gulp. "She told me you were getting divorced, that you were just living together until the lease was up." "When did she tell you that?" 3 months ago." 3 months. Not a drunken slip at a party, not a defense mechanism triggered by commitment pressure, a deliberate lie told to a specific man for a specific purpose. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? She seemed, available. Available. Yes. She was flirting. She was talking about being single. She was complaining about her roommate who didn't understand her. He signaled Carol for another scotch. I had no reason to think she was lying. But now you do. Now she's telling me you're having a breakdown, that you left suddenly and she doesn't know why. She wants me to talk to you, to help her understand what's wrong. I almost laughed. What's wrong is that I found out my wife has been telling people we're divorced. Nathan's new drink arrived, and he took a careful sip. She says it was a misunderstanding. What do you say? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his scotch like it might have answers. I say she's been calling me every day for 3 months, talking about how unhappy she is in her marriage and how much she wants to be free. He looked up at me. That doesn't sound like a misunderstanding. No, it doesn't. She asked me to come here tonight, to convince you to take her back. And are you going to try? He shook his head. I don't want to be involved in this anymore. I thought she was single. If I'd known she was married, you would have stayed away? I would have told her to get divorced first. He finished his drink and stood up, pulling out his wallet. I'm sorry about all this, David. For what it's worth, I think you're better off without her. After he left, I sat at the bar thinking about 3 months of phone calls and complaints about her unhappy marriage. 3 months of Lisa laying the groundwork for her escape while pretending everything was fine at home. Carol appeared in front of me with another beer. Friend of yours? Not exactly. He seemed nervous. He should be. He just realized he's been dating a married woman. Ah. Carol nodded knowingly. And you just realized your wife's been shopping for a replacement. Something like that. She leaned against the bar, studying me with the kind of direct gaze that comes from years of listening to people's problems. So what are you going to do about it? I thought about Lisa waiting at home in the apartment she couldn't afford, probably calling her friends to complain about my unreasonable behavior. I thought about Nathan Grant, driving back to his expensive life, relieved to be out of a situation that had gotten more complicated than he'd bargained for. And I thought about myself, sitting in an honest bar, drinking honest beer, finally understanding the difference between being alone and being lonely. I'm going to let her figure out what single actually means, I said. Carol smiled. Now that sounds like a plan. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. I had them delivered to Lisa's office, not the apartment, because I wanted her to understand that this was business now, not personal drama. Her response came within hours, not through lawyers, but through Zoe, who called me while I was having lunch at the diner. David, what the hell is wrong with you? I looked out the window at the street scene, normal people going about their normal lives, dealing with normal problems. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, and the world was continuing to turn despite the collapse of my marriage. Nothing's wrong with me, Zoe. I'm getting divorced. Lisa is hysterical. She's locked herself in the bathroom at work and won't come out. That sounds like a problem for her employer. David, she loves you. She made a mistake, but she loves you. I set down my sandwich and really focused on what Zoe was saying. What mistake was that? The thing with Nathan. She told me everything. Everything? She was lonely, David. You've been working so much, and she felt neglected. When Nathan started paying attention to her, it felt good, but nothing happened. Zoe, she told him we were getting divorced 3 months ago. There was a pause. She was confused. For 3 months? She didn't know what she wanted. Yes, she did. She wanted to be single and married at the same time. She wanted Nathan and my paycheck. She wanted freedom and security. That's exactly what it is. And now she has what she wanted. She's single. I hung up and went back to my sandwich. The turkey was good, the bread was fresh, and I was eating lunch in peace without wondering what Lisa was doing or who she was talking to, or whether she was happy with the choices I'd made for our life together. It was amazing how much mental space became available when you stopped trying to manage someone else's emotions. That evening, I was working at my kitchen table when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw April standing in the hallway, holding a bottle of wine and wearing the expression of someone who'd drawn the short straw. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Hi, David. April. Can we talk? About what? She held up the wine. I brought a peace offering. I don't want your wine, April. Lisa asked me to come. I figured. We stood there looking at each other. April had always been the diplomat in Lisa's circle, the one who smoothed over conflicts and maintained group harmony. She was probably genuinely uncomfortable with the role she'd been assigned. She's really struggling, David. Good. April blinked, surprised by the bluntness of my response. In the old dynamic, I would have been concerned about Lisa's struggles. I would have asked what I could do to help. She can't afford the apartment by herself. Then she should move. She's applied for 3 credit cards and been denied for all of them. Then she should work on her credit. David, she's your wife. No, she's not. She's my roommate, remember? And roommates aren't responsible for each other's financial problems. April shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know she handled things badly. She didn't handle things badly, April. She lied to everyone for months while she shopped for my replacement. There's a difference. She wasn't shopping for your replacement. What would you call it? April didn't have an answer for that. She stood there holding her wine, probably wishing she'd never agreed to this mission. The thing is, she said finally, we all knew she was unhappy. We? Her friends. She's been talking about feeling trapped for months, about how marriage wasn't what she expected. I leaned against the doorframe, fascinated by this glimpse into conversations I'd never been part of. What did she expect? I don't know, something different, more exciting maybe. More exciting than being married to me. April looked away. It's not personal, David. It's completely personal. She married me, then spent months complaining to her friends about how boring her life was, then started telling men she was single. How is that not personal? She never meant to hurt you. She just meant to replace me. That's not fair. I was getting tired of people telling me what was fair. You know what's not fair, April? Having your wife introduce you to her boyfriend at your friend's birthday party. That's not fair. Nathan isn't her boyfriend. He would have been if I hadn't found out. April sighed, the kind of long, frustrated exhale of someone who was losing an argument she'd never wanted to have. What do you want me to tell her? Tell her to sign the divorce papers. And if she won't? Then tell her I'll contest the divorce and make sure everyone knows exactly why our marriage ended, including Nathan Grant's wife. April's eyes widened. Nathan's married? Very married. 2 kids, big house in Westchester, wife who thinks he's been working late a lot recently. I watched April process this information, saw the moment she realized that Lisa's romantic fantasy was actually a tawdry affair with a married man who'd been lying to both women. Oh, Lisa, she said quietly. Yeah. Oh, Lisa. April left without another word, taking her wine with her. I went back to my kitchen table and my work, but I couldn't concentrate. Instead, I found myself thinking about Lisa's friends and how much they'd known about her unhappiness. How long had I been the subject of their conversations? How many times had they sat around discussing my failures as a husband while I thought everything was fine? The answer came the next morning in the form of a text from Jared. Dude, April told me about Nathan being married. That's screwed up. Lisa had no idea. I stared at the message, trying to decode it. Was Jared apologizing? Taking sides? Just sharing gossip? I typed back, Lisa had no idea about what? That he was married. She thought he was single. She thought I was single too. She told him we were divorced. Yeah, but that's different. How? You guys were having problems. She was looking for a way out. There it was. The truth, finally, from someone who didn't have enough sense to dress it up in therapeutic language or diplomatic evasions. Lisa had been looking for a way out. Not a way to fix our marriage, not a way to communicate her needs, not a way to work through her feelings of being trapped. A way out. And she'd found one, in the form of Nathan Grant, who'd seemed like a perfect upgrade until he turned out to be just another married man looking for something exciting on the side. I called my lawyer. David, how are you holding up? I'm good, Sarah. I need to ask you something about the divorce. Shoot. If Lisa contests it, how long could she drag it out? Depends on what she's contesting. If it's just a matter of not wanting to be divorced, not long. If she wants to fight about assets or support, longer. What assets? We don't own anything together except some furniture. What about alimony? I hadn't thought about alimony. What about it? She could claim she needs financial support while she gets back on her feet, especially if she's been out of work or underemployed during the marriage. She has a job. She makes decent money. But can she maintain the same standard of living without your income? I thought about the apartment Lisa couldn't afford, the credit cards she couldn't qualify for, the lifestyle she'd been living with the support of my salary. No. Then she might have a case for temporary support. How temporary? Could be a few months, could be a few years. Depends on the judge and how good her lawyer is. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about the possibility of paying Lisa's bills while she figured out her new single life. The idea was infuriating, but also clarifying. If Lisa wanted to fight the divorce, I'd give her a fight. But it wouldn't be the kind of fight she was expecting. I opened my laptop and started making a list of everyone who knew about Lisa's roommate story. April, Zoe, Jared, Nathan Grant, probably others. Then I started making phone calls. Zoe, it's David. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. David, I don't think we should be talking. How long has Lisa been telling people we're not really married? Silence. Zoe? I don't know what you mean. I mean, when did she start referring to me as her roommate? When did she start complaining about feeling trapped? When did she start talking about wanting to be single? More silence. If you don't tell me, I'll find out anyway. I'm just trying to understand the timeline. Finally. Maybe 6 months. 6 months? She was going through something, David. She felt like she'd gotten married too young, like she'd never had a chance to figure out who she was as an adult. And instead of talking to me about it, she talked to you. She didn't want to hurt you. So she decided to replace me instead. It wasn't like that. What was it like? Zoe sighed. She was scared, David. Scared of being trapped in a life that didn't fit her anymore. Scared of disappointing you. Scared of admitting she'd made a mistake. What mistake? Getting married in the first place. There it was. The truth Lisa had been too cowardly to tell me herself. She thought marrying me had been a mistake. Thank you for being honest, I said. David, wait. But I'd already hung up. I made similar calls to April and Jared, asking the same questions, getting variations of the same answers. Lisa had been unhappy for months. She'd felt trapped, confused, unsure about her choices. She'd been looking for a way out without having to admit she wanted out. And her friends had all known, had all been part of the conversation, had all watched me play the role of the oblivious husband while Lisa auditioned for her next life. By the time I finished making calls, I had a clear picture of what had been happening in my marriage, while I thought everything was fine. I also had something else, a plan. If Lisa wanted to contest the divorce, if she wanted to claim she needed my financial support, if she wanted to drag this out and make it complicated, she was welcome to try, but she might not like what came out in the process. I called Sarah back. I've changed my mind about the divorce, I said. You don't want to proceed? I want to proceed, but I want to do it differently. I want to make sure everyone understands exactly why this marriage is ending. David, I'm not sure that's the best strategy. I want to subpoena her friends. I want them to testify about her complaints about the marriage, her claims that we were divorced, her relationship with Nathan Grant. That seems unnecessarily hostile. She's been planning this exit for months, Sarah. She's been building a case for why she deserves to be free and supported. I want to build a case too. What kind of case? The kind that shows she abandoned the marriage long before I filed for divorce. The kind that shows she was actively pursuing other relationships while claiming to be single. The kind that makes it very hard for her to claim she deserves ongoing financial support. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Are you sure about this, David? It's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. I'm just making sure everyone can see it clearly. All right. Let me know when she responds to the papers, and we'll discuss strategy. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about the conversation I'd just had. A month ago, I would never have considered making our private business public. I would have been embarrassed by the idea of Lisa's friends testifying about our marriage problems. Now I realized that our private business had been public for months. Lisa had made sure of that when she'd turned our marriage into a group discussion topic. The only difference was that now I was going to be part of the conversation. Lisa signed the divorce papers on a Friday afternoon. No contest, no demands for alimony, no requests for mediation, just her signature on the line, making our separation official. I found out from Sarah, who called me at work with the news. She came in this morning with her lawyer, Sarah said. Signed everything, didn't ask for any changes. That's it? That's it. The divorce will be final in 30 days. I should have felt relief or satisfaction or something. Instead, I felt empty. 3 years of marriage ended with a signature on a legal document. David, you there? Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for handling everything, Sarah. You sure you're okay with how this went down? You seemed pretty determined to fight this out. I looked around my office. The same desk I'd sat at for 5 years, the same view of the parking lot, The same framed photo of Lisa and me from our honeymoon that I'd never gotten around to removing. I'm sure. After I hung up, I took the photo and dropped it in the trash. Then I called Mike to let him know I was taking the rest of the day off. I drove to Murphy's, even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. The bar was nearly empty, just a couple of regulars nursing beers and watching a baseball game on the TV above the bar. Carol was working the day shift, polishing glasses with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd done the same job for decades. "You're early today," she said, setting a beer in front of me without being asked. My divorce was finalized. "Congratulations or condolences?" "I'm not sure yet." She nodded like that made perfect sense. "How do you feel?" I thought about the question. How did I feel? Not happy exactly, but not sad either. More like quiet. "Free," I said finally. "That's a good start." I drank my beer and watched the baseball game, not really following the action, but enjoying the simple rhythm of it. Pitcher throws, batter swings, crowd reacts. Basic cause and effect, no hidden meanings or ulterior motives. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "David, this is Lisa. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "We're divorced. There's nothing to talk about." "Please, just 5 minutes." "No. I need to explain." "You had 3 years to explain. You chose not to." I was scared. "You were selfish." The messages stopped after that. I finished my beer and ordered another, settling in to watch the rest of the game. Around 6, the after-work crowd started filtering in. I recognized some faces from previous visits. Murphy's regulars, people who came in for a drink and conversation before heading home to their own lives and problems. One of them, a guy named Pete who worked construction, sat down next to me and ordered a beer. "How's it going, David?" "Not bad. You?" "Can't complain." Well, I could, but nobody wants to hear it. We watched the game in comfortable silence for a while. Then Pete said, "Heard you got divorced." I looked at him surprised. "How did you hear that?" "Carol mentioned it." "Don't worry, she wasn't gossiping. Just said you might need some company tonight." I glanced down the bar at Carol, who was pretending not to listen to our conversation. "Yeah, it was finalized today." "How long were you married?" 3 years. Pete nodded thoughtfully. "That's about when you figure out if it's going to work or not." "What do you mean?" "First year, you're still in love with the idea of being married. Second year, you start seeing the real person. Third year, you decide if you can live with what you see. And if you can't, then you get divorced." He raised his beer in a mock toast. "Welcome to the club." We drank to that, and I found myself feeling better than I had all day. Not because my marriage was over, but because I was sitting in a bar with someone who understood that sometimes things just don't work out, and that's okay. Around 8, my phone rang. It was Tom. "Hey, heard the news, you okay?" "I'm fine." "Where are you?" "Murphy's." "The dive bar?" "David, you're not going to become one of those guys who drinks alone in bars, are you?" I looked around at Pete and the other regulars, all of whom were engaged in various conversations about work and sports and life. "I'm not drinking alone." "You know what I mean." "Tom, I'm having a beer with some friends. I'm not drowning my sorrows or planning to become an alcoholic. I'm just processing." "Okay, but if you need anything..." "I know, thanks." After I hung up, Pete looked at me with amusement. "Brother?" "Yeah, he's worried I'm going to fall apart." "Are you?" I considered the question seriously. "No, I don't think so. I think I already fell apart. This is me putting myself back together." "That's the hardest part," Pete said. "Figuring out who you are when you're not half of something else." "How long have you been divorced?" 5 years. Best 5 years of my life." "Really?" "Really." Turns out I'm a lot more interesting when I'm not trying to be what someone else wants me to be. I thought about that as I finished my beer. For 3 years, I'd been trying to be the husband Lisa wanted, understanding when she needed space, supportive when she was stressed, accommodating when she changed her mind about what she wanted our life to look like. I'd been so focused on being a good husband that I'd forgotten to be myself. I think I need to figure out who I am again, I said. That's the fun part, Pete said. You get to decide. I left Murphy's around 9, feeling more settled than I had in months. The divorce was final. Lisa was out of my life, and I had a chance to start over. When I got back to my apartment, there was an envelope under my door. My name was written on it in Lisa's handwriting, but this time there was no check inside. Just a letter. David, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need you to know that I never meant for things to end this way. I was confused and scared, and I made terrible decisions. I hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but it's all I have to give you now. I hope someday you can forgive me, not for my sake, but for yours. You deserve to be happy, and I hope you find someone who appreciates what a good man you are. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. Lisa. I read the letter twice, then folded it and put it in the drawer with the divorce papers. Not because I was sentimental, but because it felt like the end of something that needed to be properly concluded. Then I opened my laptop and started looking at apartments. Bigger places, nicer neighborhoods, the kind of home I could build for myself instead of compromising on what we could afford together. For the first time in months, I was excited about the future. The next morning, I woke up in my studio apartment and realized I was genuinely happy. Not relieved, not vindicated, not satisfied with my revenge, just happy. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, looking out at the street where normal people were starting their normal Saturday. A couple walked by with their dog, holding hands and talking quietly. A jogger ran past, focused on her route. An old man worked in his small front garden, tending to flowers that would bloom next spring. Life going on, people making choices, everyone writing their own story. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Mike's number. Mike? It's David, about that regional manager position. I'm definitely interested. Great. When can you start? How about Monday? After I hung up, I made myself breakfast and thought about what I wanted to do with my Saturday. I could look at apartments, or go for a walk, or read a book, or call an old friend I hadn't talked to in months. I could do whatever I wanted, without checking with anyone or worrying about how my choices would affect someone else's mood. It was a strange feeling, but I thought I could get used to it. My phone buzzed with one final text from Lisa. I heard about your promotion. Congratulations, you deserve it. I read the message, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were over, and that was okay. I finished my breakfast, got dressed, and walked out into my new life.